Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me, and welcome to this month's National Health Security Preparedness Index Stakeholder Engagement and Communication Work Group meeting. Can everyone hear okay?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us. We have just a couple of things we want to take care of before we jump into some discussion today. I really appreciate those of you who have been providing feedback on the website. I've heard more folks on the phone than have logged in online. I've heard about, I think, about nine or 10 phone connections since we connected here. So I know we've got some folks on the line. So let's just quickly go down the roster here and see who we have with us so far. I think I heard Kathy. Was that you, Kathy?
I'm here, thanks.
Hi. I see Jennifer Lumpkins is on. Is Garrett with you, Jennifer, or are you representing him today?
No, I'll be representing him today. Sorry.
Oh, no. We're always glad to have you, Jennifer. Always. Laura Biaziadecki from NACHO. Are you with us, Laura? Or Nicole Junifon? Hopefully they'll be joining in shortly. Kelly DeGraff. Doug Farquhar. Andrew Jahir. Wow, we're having a little bit of a low turnout today. Kathleen Kimball Baker emailed Kathy and me last night that she had a conflict and would
David.
Hi, Mary. Good to have you on the line.
Good to be here.
Good. Well, we have a small group. We also have Kara Richardson, who's from our Program Management Office. Lizeth Fowler from our Program Management Office is also logged in with us today so that we can be sure to capture all of the discussion that we're going to be having. And with that, we'll just move ahead to the agenda. We're going to very quickly move through a few updates proposed updates to the 2015-2016 index, the public comment period, public comment informational webinars, the use, usability, and usefulness survey, and then we want to spend the bulk of our time, and since we have a small group, that may actually work better for us in terms of capturing some thoughts and really generating some discussion around some of these important issues since we are using the online interface right now. Website review, we've been trying to solicit comments from folks, and we have quite a few related to the website, and we'd like to tease out some more discussion around that. Strengthening stakeholder engagement in index development, and Kathy will be leading that discussion about engagement and communication and where they meet and where they diverge and how we can ensure that we are accomplishing those twin goals. And the communication and launch of the 2015-2016 index. Then we'll have a few questions and we'll adjourn. By way of getting through those updates really quickly, the summary document on those proposed updates to the 2015-2016 index is available online, as is the link to the public comment form. The URL is right there. And you can also link to it via a button on the home page of the NHSPI.org website. So we hope you'll take the opportunity to do that and encourage your colleagues and stakeholders to do the same as well, because it's really important. You know, one of the goals in the way we put together our work groups by ensuring that we had representatives of the major stakeholder groups of the index was for you folks to serve as, in some ways, as gatekeepers and help to bring your constituencies into the process and help to ensure that they're informed about the process. And we really appreciate your work in doing that. So with just about 8 days left on that public comment period, anything you can do to help encourage folks to provide their information would be greatly appreciated. I just want to quickly let you know that we did have a series of 3 public comment informational webinars in September. They were on the 4th, 8th, and 16th of September. We tried to have them on different days of the week. We tried to have them staggered a little bit time-wise. We had a total of 67 folks attend. You can see here that there was a pretty good breadth of attendees represented across stakeholder groups. We had a number of folks from CDC. We had a number of folks from ASPR and other organizations. We had about a little less than a third of the state public health departments, at least the state public health departments represented. I don't know how many of those were preparedness directors. We did have quite a few, but we had some of those folks. We had some local public health representatives and some researchers, and you can see a variety of folks from the healthcare area too. A lot of Joint Commission folks, and they all came to the same call. That was good. The webinar slides and recordings, if you weren't able to attend, or if you have colleagues or other stakeholders who weren't able to attend, those recordings are available online. Right now, they are at the nhspi.org/news URL that you see there. We are working with Homefront, the folks who manage our website, to move all of those over to the public comment period page as well, so that as folks go there, they have sort of one-stop shopping for the information they're looking for. The use, usability, and usefulness survey, we should be able to be sending out a link to that tomorrow morning, and we are very excited about that. Our biostatistician is putting the last touches on that today per some guidance that he got from Mary Davis, who's on the line a little earlier today. We're glad to have that, and now we're going to get that the last bow put on it, and it's going out in the morning. The pilot survey will be going to members of this work group, members of the model work group, and members of the methodology work group. So you guys get to be the first in the field as folks who are already invested in the process, so to speak, to give us your feedback on how useful the index is, on whether and how it's being used, and on how on how usable the website is. Obviously, we've been trying to gather some qualitative data from you all on that through the Google Doc work and through the conversation we had in the July meeting, and hopefully some of the conversation today. But we really want to also get some quantitative feedback on those areas as well. So we're excited to get that in the field for the pilot group, and then we will launch the broader probability-based survey to those 4 stakeholder groups that we have discussed in the past. We'll get that in the field in about 3 weeks. All right, the deadline for response to the pilot survey will be October 22nd, and we will then, as I said, field it with this larger set of stakeholders. All right, moving into the website discussion. We did have, again, some feedback from some various folks, and just to remind you what the prompts were, we had asked folks to look at the website as if they were trying to put together a hypothetical report or presentation, and to think about how easy or difficult it was to find the information, and whether the information on the website was, and if the information on the website was difficult to find, how we could improve its accessibility. We then asked folks to think about if the information wasn't there, what needs to be there to help support your uses for the index, and then some specific questions about your state's page and how that's presented and what kinds of information is there, what kinds of information perhaps should be there but is not. So that said, we have sort of 3 big buckets of questions. I'm going to ask folks to sort of respond, and we've been aggregating these responses, and I do not have all of the individual Google Docs back from Homefront yet, so we may be able to have an even more in-depth discussion about this after we have some of the U3 survey back and after we have all of the Google Docs in the data pool. But right now, some of the things that I'm hearing through the Google Docs, I've seen some things about the visuals on the website, and I'd love for folks to give their reaction. In particular, some of the things I've seen are that the connections between the header photos and health security or preparedness are not always clear. The photos are not necessarily reflective of health security and preparedness as fully as we would want to be, and that they also, those header photos also somewhat knock the pages out of balance. Because the large header photos sort of dominate the page, and then you end up having to scroll to get to actual information about the index. So I would love to hear folks' thoughts about that.
Um, and this is Kathy. I'll start a little bit there, and maybe others can open up. And I think what we may want to do with our group today too is just let folks that are on the call that have really had the chance to provide some of that feedback to kind of draw out for us as a group the 2 or 3 big issues that they see most relevant may be helpful too. And then maybe you can, like you just started here, throw out some of the as you looked at some of the feedback come back, the synthesis of those from those folks that are not here with us, that'll be really helpful. I guess with that first question of finding things, one of the things that I found, I mean, you raised the issue of visuals. This is a different issue, but I'll go back to your visuals in a moment. One of the things I found was I thought that we could probably do a little better cross-linking and cross-referencing throughout the website. We tend to have all of the tools and the background information about the index and that kind of thing under tools and resources. But people don't just go directly to one section or another. They float through the site. And so if there was a way that we could, if you're under methodology, our methodology, you could link to the FAQs and reference things across more fully so that folks can be more fluid with that was one sense I had in terms of finding things.
Thanks for that, Kathy. And we did hear some things that reflected that as well. In fact, there was a statement that the site needs an FAQ and a statement about the index about who it is intended for and what they can use it for. And there actually is such an FAQ, but it's kind of buried back there on that tools and resources page. And so it's very challenging if you don't know where to go to find it. And that was really one of the reasons we wanted to create this sort of hypothetical scenario and cut folks loose and send them out on their own to see if they could find things, because that tells us that it's not just our perception that things are difficult to find. When folks are saying the site needs this and there is something like that there, then you know it actually is not functioning quite as optimally as you would like it.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be interested, Mary Lanhost, did you have any experience of working through the site and not being able to find the FAQs or not feeling this sense of connection across the site?
Yeah, hi, this is Mary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I never actually could find the FAQ, so maybe, yeah, I think I was expecting it to be under a different link. When I went to the resources, I was looking for other things, so I didn't notice that there is an FAQ there. So, yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, I think we have to integrate things better.
And there was another comment that related to that said that, that there could be some improvement in the organizational structure around things like the FAQ and the tools, because they were just sort of all dumped into one place. So maybe splitting the FAQs out into their own tab and having them all in one place with a tab that actually says FAQs so that you know where you're going and what you're getting when you get there. I think that there were a lot of really interesting comments about organizational structure.
That might be its own link from about the index or about our, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see Liam has joined us from NIHS. Liam, have you had a chance to spend any time on the website? And if so, did you have a similar kind of experience in trying to navigate it?
I have not been able to do my assignment as requested. But, just looking at it, I agree in terms of trying to find an FAQ off the index. It's not, unless that's what the question mark is for. I think hearing the various issues of integration is absolutely key. Hearing those comments and seeing how it's set up, I can see how it can be very difficult to see how everything, tools and resources are related perhaps to the index. I will do better and some feedback.
No, thank you, Liam. We know how busy everyone is, so we appreciate any time anyone can spend looking through the website. I did, a couple of folks have now mentioned that About tab at the first, and we did get at the top of the page, there are these little tiny About, News and Events, and Contact Us tabs that folks have called out, that they are small and overwhelmed by, again, going back to those web page visuals, so that it's challenging for folks to even find the About and News and Events and Contact Us sections. Are those tabs something that would draw your eye when you first got there, or do you agree that their placement and sizing might be somewhat problematic?
This is Mary Linehouse again. I'm looking at the website now. So yeah, I agree that yeah, the About tab is kind of small and it's not highlighted the way the other large ones are. And it seems like if somebody's going to this page for the first time, that might be a tab that they might like to go to first. Whereas if they click on the index, it automatically jumps right into, you know, the actual data and the maps and everything. So I think that should be bigger, and I would also probably have a link either within About or even next to it that has an overall FAQ, and then the overall FAQ can be divided into the topical chunks that it's currently divided in under the resources.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Anna, this is Kathy, the place that I found the biggest challenge with the tabs was when, and actually this moves us a little bit into the discussion of the data. When you go into a state data page and then you click on your state and you move down to, you know, opening up a domain, the subdomains come out as separate tabs, and it's really easy to entirely miss that there are tabs to click on there. You could, because you tend to go down the page fully and just go domain to domain and think it's going to follow sequentially down, and you don't see that those are, each subdomain is a separate tab, and you really lose the richness of the index with it.
I really appreciate that, Kathy. I assure you that that is a comment that has been shared in the past. that is a particular visualization is problematic for folks who aren't looking, and it goes all the way down to the even down to sort of the measure level. The way it breaks out, it can be a challenge, I think, for a lot of folks to navigate. In looking at state pages, did other people find that intuitive, or do they have suggestions for how it might be better displayed? If you want to just pull up your own state's page now, if you're able to, and have a look and see if you can think through or provide some suggestions for how that could be improved.
So I'll throw in a starting one. I spent some time with it, and others, Jennifer, who've looked at it from the state perspective, and Mary, et cetera, and Liam chime in. One of the challenges I have with it is it doesn't, as a state, I want to go and I want to be able to see on the screen, fully encompassed on one screen, not scrolling, an overview of all my index results. And kind of it captures it at a higher level with more graphical display. I think we lose, it's hard to do any kind of comparison or any meaningful at-a-glance look that actually captures, at least at the domain level, all your domains and how they relate to national averages, if that's what we're going to end up currently using. So I think there's not any, we need to have something that fits within a screen that you could do a screenshot of and start with dialogue with partners, something that at least to the domain level, you can kind of do at a glance and then drill down within each of those to subdomains and individual measures. I need to be able to start big picture and come down.
Excellent.
Yeah, Kathy, this is Jennifer with ASTA. I would agree with that because I just went on there, and since we kind of work with all the states, I just scrolled on my home state of Pennsylvania, and when you scroll on it, it does give you the different, the categories and the for each of the domains, but then you got to click on See State Profile. So I think that if you could do some type of a comparison where here's where the national averages are, and then here's where that state fits, I think that would really help too.
Right, yeah, and I think something visual that's not just here's the numbers next to each other, but it's some kind of a visual image. graphics.
Excellent. This is terrific. I was just getting ready. I'm so glad you jumped in there, Jennifer. I was just getting ready to ask if folks had seen that sort of hover image. That's exactly what I was thinking would be nice to have, something like that on the page that sort of is situated along with the national averages and such. So I'm glad you called that out, because I think that's, I mean, it's nice to have that there, but then I agree completely that when you move to the page, when you hover over it, you have this nice sort of, or on some machines, you single click, you have this nice sort of box that pops up that tells you what your overall and your domain scores are. But then as soon as you click on it, you lose that sort of big picture of what you're looking at.
Well, and I think we don't even, I mean, the numbers are there, but it doesn't have any context to put it in. It doesn't say the context of 10. It doesn't say where you fall in that context of 10 and how far that is from the national average. And if you're going to be doing tertiles, it doesn't really put it in a tertile range if it's going to be way above or below.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what you talk about ways to compare to the national average visually, graphs, bar graphs, or something along those lines. Would those be the kind of visuals that you would be interested in? Just trying to throw out some ideas of how to present it in ways other than just the raw numbers as well.
Yeah, I would definitely have something as a graph. Like, you can show where the state is compared to where the national is. And I'm not sure the best to do, whether it's a bar graph or, or something of that nature. But it would be neat to kind of see that. And, I was also thinking about regionally. So if you look at the way that they're broken down regionally by HHS or FEMA regions, that would be interesting, too, to see how the regions are compared to the national, as a region. But I guess that's getting into a little too much.
Yeah, that's getting into a different, do we have readiness to do that, actually?
Yeah.
Good question.
But that
Other ideas on the visualization in terms of being able to absorb the information when you first come to a page from folks?
I guess going back to sort of the general context and knowing what it really means. So if I click on my North Carolina, going to the general state profile, I mean, so yes, what do these numbers mean? Is it, what is 7.6 good? I think we've heard that, but then I guess in terms of, so what are the areas that bring you down? And I guess that's where the state summary is, and you have to unpackage more information by clicking on the down arrows for each state summary. Mm-hmm. I mean,
yeah. I think when you say what does it mean, I think that's a key question. I think probably the biggest benefit of the index and the biggest use is to be able to look across the results, see what they are, and then use it to drive dialogue, to explore, does this reflect what the reality that you feel on the ground here, and if so, why or why not, and what could we do collectively to make a difference in this subdomain or that subdomain. So I think the ability to have some image that actually looks at the whole structure of the index and lays out sort of where your results are and where your results are well above or well below. And I know there's lots of debate and question about how accurate the index can be in terms of that comparative ability yet, and quite how tight that is. But to, at least at a high level, be able to look at, and you all used tertiles this year. In the past, you did an estimate of roughly how close are we in things. But is this in the lower tertile or the upper tertile, or compared across the nation? And I think we have to be careful on the caveats we've all had around comparisons. But at least at the rough scale, if there's a way to look across the index and kind of identify these are the 4 subdomains where we really seem to be shining. What are we doing well here? Do you all agree with this? Does this seem like, what do you think leads to that? Or, here's the 3 subdomains that we're really wrestling with, and what does that reflect about our community, and what could we do to strengthen? I think you need something that can put it all together, that you could stimulate a conversation around.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Excellent. I'm writing as fast as I can talk, and then when I look up from my page, I've lost my place. We had a couple of other comments specific to the state pages. One of the comments was that it appears that a state has a worse score or a better score than the prior year, and I'm not going to name the state, but this score has a worse score or a better score than the prior year, and they couldn't find the data from the prior year, and that actually points to two different issues. One is that the data are there, but you have to go back to the main index page and click on 2013 data to pull that up. So they're not easily compared across. And one of the reasons they're not easily compared across is because the way the index is put together right now, it's not trendable. So there was a conscious decision to try to discourage folks from trying to trend, try to use the data from 2013 and 2014 to trend, but it doesn't appear that the explanation of that was clear enough, because the data are there. If you go back to the index page, you can see 2014 data and 2013 data tabs, and you can sort of move between them, and they show you just generally the picture changes a little bit, but yeah, I mean, that's been a real issue, is that folks, and we heard about this, I mean, I think Kathy and I heard about this in the spring at the Preparedness Summit about some policymakers looking at trend lines between the 2013 and the 2014 index to inform decisions, and really the index had changed substantially enough between those years that it was not necessarily a scientifically valid leap to make to look at those trend data. Kathy, do you remember, and I know that Kathy has been very careful every time I've ever seen her present to be sure to underscore that point, so I'll let her speak to that for just a moment.
Well, I think this is a really important communication piece, because there was a conscious decision in index development to put it out there and to start to produce an index very early in its development cycle, with the belief that doing that would result down the road in a better index and one that evolved in ways that were most useful for the community. And so the challenge with doing that is you're not ready to, the index isn't ready to be used in ways yet that we all want to use it. And I think we all jump into wanting to use it for the longitudinal piece. And so I think we just have to continue to accept as a community, and this is challenging, but that that we have to wait till the ability to do that longitudinal comparison truly is there before we start to utilize it for that. And I think that becomes the whole question of do we really even give past data along those lines with that, because maybe we just need to wait until we have a more stable index model and then begin to use longitudinal comparisons with that. But we certainly want to get there. But I think this is a piece of being in developmental phase that is just really challenging. And we have
I think
communicating that.
It's a piece where we're really going to rely a lot on the members of this work group to help us determine how best to message this. If you had a chance to look at the proposed updates for the next index, and again, those are proposed updates. They're being vetted through the public comment period. We'll be discussing them at our National Advisory Committee meeting. We'll be discussing the public comments at our National Advisory Committee meeting. They are proposed, and some will probably go through and some may not. But many of those proposed changes are geared toward having a trendable index. And when we achieve the point that we have what is a scientifically valid trendable index, or the majority of the community feels is a scientifically valid trendable index, then what we will be doing at that point is going back and the last 2 years and looking at the same measures that are in this index and pulling those data for the last 2 years to really look at the trend over the last couple of years. But what that's going to do is create two different data analyses essentially for each state for each year, because you will have what was initially collected in the index the way it was at that time, and then what has been retrospectively put together with the scaling and weighting changes that have been discussed to reflect a trendable piece. So we're going to have to distinguish very carefully between this is the index that you were presented in 2013, but using today's index methodology, this is what it would have been with the same information. So if you're looking to trend data, you need to do that, because there's going to be a difference between what they were presented in 2013 and what is shown in the trending work, if we're able to go back and do retrospective analyses from the prior 2 years using the current index methodology. So we need to think very carefully, if we are able to go down that path, about how best to clearly get that message across. And I'm not even sure I clearly got it across on the call. So
yeah, I'm really thinking, this is going to be an issue that really needs to get wrestled with collectively, in terms of, do we actually put out longitudinal data this year, even though it's using different models? Because I think there are both model change issues, but there are also internal modeling issues that impact the ability to interpret that longitudinal data. And I think until you run it with whatever the final model is and look at that, we have to be really careful about promising the ability to do that this year, because frankly, as soon as we do it, the media and others jump on that and interpret it without looking at the nuances of what led to the change. It may not just truly be a change in preparedness levels. And so I think we have to be really careful about making that decision to put out longitudinal data.
This is Mary Leinholt. I'd like to weigh in on this now if I can, or did you want to go on into some other issues more broadly before we get deeper?
That's great, Mary.
So thanks. So I was the one that submitted the comment about looking at a state, and it was my state, Georgia. I don't mind calling it out. Looking at 2013 versus 2014. And in 2013, I should have been clear in my comments, I was able to see a summary about what were the overall categorical score differences for 2013 versus 2014, but you can't get the sort of detailed report for 2013 data that you can for 2014. So, hearing this discussion, I appreciate why that might be the case. And what I would like to suggest is that there's actually two longitudinal issues for the webpage. One is longitudinal data for states and for the country as a whole, and the other is the longitudinal history of the development of the index and the model. So for the purposes of where we are at with the index now, it might make more sense to focus longitudinally on how the model and the index are developing from year to year. So if we're going to have two tabs here, for example, as it is now, we could have the 2014 data tab, which really gets into all the details. And then for 2013, instead of a data tab, maybe we would have a 2013 index tab, which explains what major changes were made to the index and why from 2013 to 2014. And then maybe just give the highest level national snapshot instead of giving people the opportunity to dig into the data, because that would kind of short circuit the inclination to go, oh, look, there's 2014 and 2013 data. I can do a comparison. And then I look and see, oh, there's been a change in my state and it's been a change for the worse. Well, what's the reason for that? And then not being able to dig into that is kind of frustrating. So, based on what you're saying about the changes for 2015 and that there will be kind of an increasing potential to do, a reasonable longitudinal comparison for states in the nation across time, maybe there would be, we would want to kind of have two different sections on the website, one for the data and one for kind of a historical accounting of the development of the index over time.
I really like that, Mary.
That's really great input there, Mary. That is terrific. And it relates to some comments we've had about the need for improved organizational structure across the website in general, so that, for example, we have things like things that reflect the actual operational elements of index development. So you have work group pages that are actually repositories for the work being done in those work groups. If you want to know what's going on with the model group, you go to a model work group page. You have all of the archived slides, you have all of the archived materials, you have all the archived recordings. So if you're really curious about digging into what the conversations the model work group have been having and you haven't been able to attend, they're all there. All of those pieces are on the website, but currently with the current structure, they are all uploaded to the news section. So you have this long string of recordings and slide decks and similar kinds of pieces, and they're not really sorted in a way that meaningfully reflects the operations or the process of index development. So I would love to hear anyone's thoughts for organizationally overarching organizational structure issues that the website could better address. And I think that Mary calling out this issue of the index, the index history being reflected in those tabs rather than just the data is really a key piece of that puzzle. So any ideas folks have about ways to better aggregate and organize the website, big picture, to make it more useful?
I'm wondering if maybe there's not any specific ideas on that one, if there's any other big issues that people would like to raise before we move on to the next topic area. I have one I might raise a little short question on, but other website related things that people would like to put out there is important to capture, and we can also come back to these topics with another meeting, the next call. I'll throw one brief one out, and that is the national maps. I'm not sure that they're very helpful or very clear to me on what we're really trying to depict as they currently are getting used. It's not clear, are they in quartiles or deciles or tertiles or what they really mean. But even bigger picture than that, I will say that when we did collect data from stakeholders in the past, the most meaningful types of comparisons that they spoke to us thinking would be most helpful were actually not national maps or national listings, but rather first longitudinal comparisons, which was we talked about a minute ago, which we all would like, and secondly there was some interest in kind of like state comparisons, and that would be the ability to look at a state that similar rural versus urban nature, or socioeconomic status, or type of risk most commonly faced. Those like comparisons would probably be more beneficial to them quality improvement-wise than a national map that didn't quite have a lot of meaning to it. So maybe we can come back to discussions around something like that in the future as well.
Yeah, that sounds great, Kathy. And something that I've been really sort of trying to promote for consideration as a visualization for the next index, or probably not the next one, we're probably an index or two out from this, but is for folks to be able to have a slider or something that allows you to perhaps do some risk-based looks nationally. So if you want to look at how you land in terms of hurricane risk versus tornado risk versus, whatever your specific risk may be of concern in your area, that we have some kind of a way of allowing folks to look at that risk-by-risk comparison in some ways.
Yeah.
And I do think we're a ways out from that, but hopefully we'll get there.
It would actually be an interesting mechanism for engaging stakeholders to talk about, if you were to do like state comparisons, what would the parameters be that would be most useful?
That's a great idea. And as you talk about engaging stakeholders, I'm going to flip to the next slide if there are no other comments. Does anyone else have anything they want to add about the website or this discussion we're having around like state comparisons?
I just support your risk one there, Anna. I think that's a really good idea.
Thank you.
That also helps link people, I think, to folks with similar risks in terms of ideas from each other and sharing ideas and best practices and those kinds of things.
Well, and the current index is an all hazards It's an all hazards index, and so the slider is an attempt to think about how you meet those needs to understand, but yeah, we score poorly in areas related to hurricane risk, but we're Kansas.
Right.
So I think that's something that's a tool that I think we really need to figure out how to develop it and present best, and we'll need stakeholders to work with us to do that. But as we're talking about this stakeholder engagement, I am going to slide to the next slide and hand the mic to Kathy. I will note that in your top right-hand corner, there's a files box, and we've been tracking our communication and engagement activities. Some of these have been more unidirectional communications, some have been more bidirectional communications, but if you're curious as to some of the contacts that have been made, there is a file up in the upper right-hand corner that you can download and have a look. And I will now hand the mic over to Kathy.
Thank you, Anna. This is a topic that I just wanted to at least introduce today and think forward. You know, we are fairly new as a work group. We really only had 2 calls, one of which was an orientation, and we've done a lot of updates. But I think there's some, we're now beginning to get into deeper conversation and more meaningful conversation, I think, that can really inform the index more. And so your website discussion was one piece of that. But I think one of the things that we can also offer the index development process is just some guidance and feedback on you know, what are we really looking for with stakeholder engagement, and how can that best be done, and how do we know when we've done that? So I guess, you know, as we said earlier, the philosophy of developing the index was one that we started out being that we wanted to develop something that was actually helped to be developed by the community for the community to use. And you can't do that without really meaningful, connected engagement by the parties that would be using the index or interpreting the index, and combining that with our developers. And so it's obviously really critical. And we've done lots of ways of doing that, and there were different resources in years past to do that with. But there's always challenges of a transition year. A transition year, you know, you are in this process of getting into a new area and learning what you don't know and may not even realize what you don't know yet. At the same time, you're introducing new ideas and good ideas, fresh ideas that are really important, and beginning to a culture, a community towards those, and to think about it so that you can really move forward collectively together. But you don't yet in that transition year necessarily have all the systems and the relationships and the trust yet developed to enable the full engagement that you would really like for moving forward. So I think transition years are always really challenging that way. And so one of the things I think we can do to step back as this work group is to kind of begin to think through, you know, how can we make sure that there is strong engagement moving forward, even more so than there is currently. And I, you know, we are a stakeholder engagement and communications work group, and I guess I want to kind of draw out that those are related, but not necessarily the same thing, and that, you know, communications is one way of engaging, but it is not necessarily the same as simply sharing information in any way. And so I think we have to think about them very differently. Or at least collectively, and not just stop with the communications piece. I think it's about more than, we succeed in engagement not by just making opportunities available for folks to tap in, but really providing forums that they are able to and want to engage in with that. And so you know, I think it's an interesting question. How do we know when engagement is happening, and what leads to that? So with that background, on the next slide, I kind of wanted to open up a discussion for the next 5 or 10 minutes, actually, to you all to kind of, you know, say what processes and mechanisms do you see as it's gotten structured, as the index has gotten structured this year, that can support meaningful engagement in the index work, and how is your community responding to those, and how can we use them more effectively? So I thought maybe I'd hear from you all in terms of what you think is in place in terms of structures that can be beneficial and ways that we could either utilize them more effectively or add to or change processes that would result in engagement. Maybe the first question is actually, how do you know when engagement happens? What does it look like when it happens?
You have a meaningful sharing of information and feedback, I guess.
Yep.
And also communication between, practitioners or health departments or policymakers about the index. So it's not just kind of us communicating kind of one way to potential audiences about the index, but once the information gets out there, they're actually talking to each other about it, in addition to reaching back with questions.
Great. So
And maybe examples of anybody actually, looking at the index and using the information to make organizational or policy or practice changes of some kind.
people are playing with it and starting to use it.
Yeah.
Trying it out. I heard meaningful sharing of information and feedback, that it's really two ways of communicating, that they're that we see people within a community talking about it with each other, not just when we bring it up, and that people are actually playing with it, using it, trying it out, and letting us know how it works. What else? And that's a great list of how we know it. The communities that you work with, where do you think they are in that right now?
Kathy, this is Jen. I think they probably are just beginning to probably look at it because they really haven't been engaged throughout the entire process when you think about the preparedness directors. So I think one of the things that could be done better in the future iterations of the index is maybe having the preparedness directors engaged from day one. So in this way, they can provide their feedback along in the process, so not just waiting until the public comment period. That would just be my suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that would be more broadly across all stakeholders, not just preparedness directors.
Yeah, I guess it would pertain to all stakeholders. Yeah, I'm just using the preparedness directors in general because of being involved in the index previously, there has been engagement all along the process, and also having an advocate out there, so a representative of that stakeholder group to kind of keep pushing the need for review of this or engagement within the index. So you want that advocate.
And by structure, that's probably part of, Anna, you could speak to this, part of what you see as the worker representatives and on the model and the analysis and the stakeholder engagement work group over time. But at this point, they're still learning, catching up, trying to understand the concepts.
Correct.
Exactly, and that was one of the goals, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, in the way we structured the work groups to draw in stakeholders from each of the many sectors that are implicated in public health preparedness, in health security. We wanted to try to ensure that there was representation both from folks who had been involved in the earlier iterations of the index, so folks like Kathy and Bob Burhans and Tom Inglesby on the NAC chair. We wanted to make sure that those folks were at the table, as well as folks like Jackie Scott and Jim Craig serving on some of the work groups. We've had a little more challenge somehow getting a DPHP rep for this group, but we will get one. Unfortunately, the first couple of folks we've contacted haven't been available, but we will we will get one for this work group as well. But the goal was to have at least a quarter to a third of the representation on each of the work groups be folks who had been intimately involved in various stages of index development, and to act as key gatekeepers to those communities, not just in terms of sending information out to them, but also in bringing information back to the group. So as you know, as Kathy mentioned earlier, the index currently is not resourced at the same level that it has been historically, and so we've had to rely more on some of these online communication mechanisms like webinars, like the call for public comment period that is now open, like the call for measures that we maintain running on the website. We had a brief window in the early part of the year up until the beginning of spring for folks to recommend measures for this coming index, but we keep that button up always. So we're having to rely more on some communication channels that, if you aren't careful, can be very unidirectional. So we've been trying to supplement some of that with, some handshakes and discussions and those kinds of things at various meetings around the country, as well as with calls to some of the work groups for both ASTO and NACHO when the opportunity arises. So we do what we can with the resources we have, but we always want to improve, and we always want to make sure that we are making sure that those folks who are most invested in the index and those folks who most need the index to support their work are engaged at every step of the process. So really appreciate any ideas that anyone can bring to the table, because we certainly know what a valuable community has been built around this index, and we don't want to lose that. Not only that expertise, but also that sense of community around the index.
So I think part of what I'm hearing is, and this is, I think, a transition year issue, we're getting some structures in place to do that. You've got the work groups, and you've got representatives in lots of good communities that could serve as advocates and liaisons and two-way feedback. But I guess the question I then start to ask the work group members is, how do we use these work groups and other mechanisms to better engage earlier, and to give you materials and information that can generate that meaningful sharing of information and that feedback? Does it have to do with process? Does it have to do with content of what's being talked about and dealt with? Are there issues that we're this far in the year we're afraid we're missed engaging people on that we need to hear about? What can change so that you are able to better be that advocate and that liaison and that feedback back and forth, and that we can better engage your community through the process, not just at the end of the year?
Kathy, this is Jen. I just want to go back to what Anna said. So Anna, I'd be happy to work with you offline to determine who the preparedness director could be. So we have a new, our elections will be coming up this fall in just another month, and so we might be able to generate some interest among some of our elected folks, like our chair or chair-elect or so forth, just to see who's got interest in, and is able to. And I think the only reason why I think you had some issues this year is because I know when you were trying to reach out with Mike Harriman, he took on a new, a new curriculum, and so he's trying to finish up his certificate. So I think that's why they want to make, and so I can work with you offline to determine who that person would be going forward. And then, and hopefully you'll generate a lot of interest at the DPHP meeting in October.
Really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that, Jennifer, and thank you again for the invitation to talk to them.
Yeah, so, and just let me know, because I think I shared with you the registration information and all that good stuff, and if I didn't, I will make sure that you have it. And then let me know who you think will be presenting.
Thanks, Jennifer. Will do.
Sure.
Anna and Kathy, this is Mary Davis. One thought that I have is to get folks to engage, they may need more ideas and examples, case stories about how others in their circle are actually using the index to galvanize their support and their interest. So it may be that that we need showcasing within each of these major stakeholder groups about how someone in their group is already using the index.
And I think that's a great opportunity for engaging people in use of the index, understanding use. And I guess I'm going to go back even further and ask, what about engaging in the development piece? Because we are still very early in development, and I don't know if folks have been able to look through the public comment document yet, but there are lots of proposed changes that are now just put together for the first time into a package that's out there publicly. So, you know, how do we engage people more in how do we package information? How do we pose questions in a way that helps people engage meaningfully?
Well, this is Mary Linehurst. I'd just like to echo that I agree very much with Mary Davis's comments that it would be really helpful to have some case examples and illustrations for how people, you know, are using or would hope to use the index. And I think, you know, probably an important key to engaging more people to participate in the development is to, you know, clarify how it will be useful to them when it's done. And what they can use it for. So if we can have some good communication strategies around that in conjunction with some, you know, recruiting activities and trying to be welcoming and invite people in to participate in the development once they see what it can do. I mean, maybe it's kind of taking a, you know, the quality improvement approach or, you know, whatever other sort of messaging would really speak to people. And get them to see and share the vision of what the index, the value of the index, and how they'll be able to use it.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think another opportunity might be that, you know, when you look at that suggested changes document, it's a bear to look at. And, you know, for some of these groups, it may mean that you need to think about which aspects of the index are most relevant to them and most important to them, and engage them around those specific aspects of the index rather than the entire enterprise. That might be an easier way to get them to buy into thinking about it and understanding how the results can really be used by them in meaningful ways.
Yeah, so packaging it in better ways.
Right. You know, smaller chunks, you know, maybe pieces of the index that are more or less appropriate, or even submeasures that may be more or less appropriate. So that I think it needs to be more accessible if you want people to engage at that level of specificity.
Yep. And also out building on that, I think we need to be able to present the issue at the higher level issues. It's good to follow with the details, but you know, for instance, I look at the document that we've been working on, and there's lots of opportunity to send lots of good comments back. But you know, if you really read through it, I find that in many ways there are changes to the overarching purpose and what we're measuring when we make these proposed changes, but that's not called out. So it doesn't have an intro that says we're looking at the index now with the following purpose. This is a shift in this direction. We're now measuring differences among, you know, refining the comparative ability of the index between states and domains and subdomains. More than measuring against the national average. It doesn't bring out that high level concepts that people could probably engage in at a different way or use to put the rest of the findings in context. So I wonder if thinking about the content of what we share at a higher level with the details to follow and available, and also maybe posing key questions that they can really get into responding to would be helpful.
So yeah, this is Liam. I'm, as a more of a visual kind of learner, it would be nice in terms of even almost a comparison kind of chart. Here's what it currently is. Here are the proposed changes that you can kind of see immediately, and then, rationale for why the changes are being proposed.
That would be neat.
Agreed that a 214-page document is pretty tough to weigh through and then to get the meaningful feedback unless people are really committed to it.
Yeah, that would be interesting, the kind of current and the new, and start at a high level and then drill down. Currently the index is designed for the following purposes and measures the following things, or evaluates the following things, and it is proposed to be used for the following activities. And under the new method, it's measuring why instead, and the benefits of that are X, Y, and Z, and here's the trade-offs, and get people to weigh in on those shifts to understand the rationales. I think when you wrestle with it in those transitions and see the pros and cons, and then you can move along with something, understand what, and provide comment back.
Well, thank you all so much. This has been a lot of really, really helpful guidance on a lot of really thorny issues that we have to deal with in a transition year, and we really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and expertise. I am aware that we have run over the amount of time that we told you we would take from you today, so I'll just let you know quickly before we go, and I do not want to cut off the conversation. We will continue. I promise you we will continue this discussion next month. This is going to be an ongoing discussion for this work group. As long as we exist, we're going to keep talking about what are the best ways we can engage and help people navigate through change, evolution, all those kinds of pieces, and make sure that we are not creating vacuums or areas for confusion. So we definitely want to continue this discussion. But just quickly to let you know, we're going to be going into more depth about this next month. We're beginning discussions of the launch of the 2015-2016 index. We're planning a state preview period, as we've had in past years, late November, early December, a couple, 2-3 weeks before launch, so that the states have a chance to look through, the state preparedness directors have a chance to look through the index and flag anything that might be problematic, anything that looks wrong, as we have done in past years. We're planning a soft launch in December 2015, and then we're going to really do the hard launch and push in January of 2016. A new strategic communication partner has been brought on board for this, GYMR Public Relations, who've been working very closely with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation on positioning their Culture of Health initiative, and they will be working with us to also fold the index into that broader messaging about the culture of health, while also allowing the index to maintain its own identity. So we actually have calls coming up over the next couple of weeks to start looking at timelines and what that's going to look like, and we'll be sharing that with you and looking for your feedback on suggestions that have come to the fore. Would like for you to be thinking about, in thinking about the launch, and we've started some of these discussions today about what's going to be most helpful to support the use of this new index, and for which users. Are there targeted and tailored messages? Are there FAQs? Are there visualizations that we need to be doing? And we talked about some of these pieces, but really we're hoping that you can delve deeply and spend a lot of time talking about these in the next couple of meetings, because we want to do all we can to enhance index use and usefulness.
So Anna, are some of these dates that you have in terms of public comment period, are they hard and fast? Thinking, in terms of a newsletter out to our Partnerships for Environmental Public Health community about the open comment period. I'm, frankly not aware of how many folks are cognizant of this tool.
Well, the public comment period runs through preparedness, through the preparedness month. The official comments to be considered for inclusion in the next index, because we're collecting data even now on all of the measures that are currently in the index, so that we have all of the data, because we have essentially 2 months to put it together. once the public comment period closes and the National Advisory Committee gives us guidance on the final, which of those proposed changes are going to be made and which of those proposed changes will be either tabled or discarded. So so we do have a tight timeline there. I think I can probably talk to the folks here and have the forms left up just for our general information if folks want to share thoughts, but in terms of it actually impacting the next version of the index, I think that September 30th is going to have to be hard and fast. But let me get back with you and see if we can leave it open if folks would like to provide additional information that can help us think through some of these other issues as well.
Liam, that's a great question, and I think they do need to really do a cutoff then, because there's a ton of work that goes into producing an index once you actually decide on your final model. And I'm sure you've got to also process the feedback that comes back. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to provide that continued on, input that would be useful in the next year, which would be great. And I also want to just, in the whole area of stakeholder engagement, say, Anna, thank you. You've done a ton of work in trying to get information out to folks over the year and done a host of things and getting structures set up. And much of this really is about a transition year and then how to look at our processes. And I hope this is a topic that people will continue to think about, that we come back to. It sounds like we've got both discussion around communication tools and things around the launch, but also around how do we continue this discussion around stakeholder engagement, what's meaningful. We've heard a good idea today about stories and case stories and use, and about ways that we can package information and engage people through high-level questions, and then clarity of presentation of the information in ways that may be good moving forward. But that's a great start of list of things. And so think about ways otherwise that we can really build that relationship and that engagement even more meaningfully moving forward, because it's going to be critical to have if we're going to evolve a tool that is really embraced and used and understood by all. So,
and I'd like to remind folks too, and thank you for that, Kathy. Your leadership in this area has been for years one of the high points of folks who are working on the index, and it continues to be so, and we really appreciate you continuing in the engagement chair role and helping to guide these discussions and these important considerations. I'd like to remind the folks on the line that if you want to know more about that development process and more about what the other work groups are doing, those are all open meetings, including this one. All of our work group meetings are open meetings. We invite you to drop in on any of those. The links are on the website. Again, they may not be in the best possible place at the moment for finding them, but if you go to the news page on the website, you can find them. And we are working with Homefront to try to improve the website over the next few months. So we're hoping to get those aggregated in those work group pages soon for one-stop shopping. Also want to tell folks, and I don't have it on this slide, but the Twitter feed did launch. The index Twitter feed did launch, and that is another piece that Homefront is overseeing for RWJF. And the Twitter feed, the handle is @NHSP Index. So if you're on Twitter, please, by all means, follow @NHSP Index. And we're trying to set up editorial calendars with them such that we make sure that information is pushed out in a timely manner. But as you all know, when you first start a Twitter account, it takes a while to build that followership. So if you're on Twitter, we really encourage you to follow the index. Before we go, and I know we're now 8 minutes over, but are there any questions or issues that folks want to raise for next month's meeting?
Would folks like to talk more about the communications and the launch piece, more about website, more about stakeholder engagement? Are those all good topics for next time, or anything particular else that we should add to it?
Kathy, this is Jen. Actually, Garrett and I and the ASO team will not be on that next call because we are going to be at the DPHP meeting.
And Anna, you might be too.
Yeah, I've got to look at what day. I think Jennifer gave us a day that we're presenting, and I didn't flag that it was a conflict, but
Tuesday,
I'll double
October
check
27th,
that.
and it's on the agenda that I just sent to you.
Great. I will pull up my email. Oh, I think someone is dialing out, so I think we're going to cut this short before we hear someone's conversation. But thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.